Hello everybody, welcome back to the channel. This is the Mad Knives, a 5-album, 5-movie sci-fi concept project, and today we're doing the very last episode of the story series. We're going to wrap up the entire story of the first album, all here in one video, so let's get into it. Show the logo, play the music. Okay, so we've already been through each song in the album and done the story recap for each song. You can go check out those videos earlier in the playlist. So now that we're through all 10 songs for the first album, I'm going to do a complete story wrap up, the whole story. And we're going to use the story circle to talk our way through it, which we've discussed before. This is a framework used for writing and storytelling that has 8 points that go around a circle. The 8 points are you, need, go, search, find, take, return, changed. So those are the main beats that I use to write the whole story, and they roughly plot along with the 10 songs, so we're going to go through what happens in each of these steps. The first step is you, and this is often considered the normal world. So for the Mad Knives, you is a very, very short step in the story circle because we barely see them in the normal world. The first thing that happens is we get news of this rogue incoming planet that is on a certain collision course with Earth. So we use this first sort of step to talk about the situation that everybody is in and meet the characters and go over some of the dynamics between them. So we're meeting the pilot and the co-pilot, and the doctor and the farmer in this very early part of the story. We see the pilot and the co-pilot through sort of like news transmissions about what's happening in this impending disaster. And we see the doctor and the farmer disagreeing about what they should do about this disaster. The doctor doesn't want to leave, is really hesitant to change, and is sort of emotional and angry about it. And the farmer is ready to go, believes everything in the news reports, and thinks that the decision is obvious. And this is a problem because the doctor and the farmer are in a relationship together and have been for a long time. So we see the conflict between the two of them, the optimism coming through these news reports that's like a little bit creepy. And we start to see, well, not in the first song, but in the second song, we start to see the plans for what's going to happen. So these plans bring us into the next step of the story circle, which is need. The need is to escape the planet. For humanity to find a way to survive this horrifying disaster, that is the need. And this brings us into the next step of the story, which is where everybody starts to build these homemade spaceships as an attempt to fulfill this need. So we see that there are plans put together by the governments and international institutions to have everybody build these homemade spaceships based on whatever materials and natural resources are nearby in their geographical region. And the plan is for everybody to build these ships and take off and escape the planet and this impending collision. Each ship is going to have 5 people, and there will be 5 types of ships. And these ships are meant to combine into mini ecosystem pods once they get into outer space. And then these ecosystem pods are meant to eventually combine into a much bigger thing that they're building, which was going to be essentially a mechanical Earth to replace the Earth that got totally destroyed. So there's plans and preparation. That leads us to the next step, which is go. And this is when these fleets of spaceships actually launch. So we see our spaceship launch, which is called the Radio Flyer, with our 5 characters on board: the pilot, the co-pilot, the doctor, the farmer, and the mechanic. The mechanic is the fifth character, a little mysterious. They were actually carried on board the ship before the launch, and they are passed out from some accident that happened during the preparation process. So they're sort of like knocked out in a coma, but they're on board the ship. So we get this go where the launch happens, and the launch is successful, at least at first. Everybody gets off the planet and gets pretty far away. But we see the whole sort of ring of spaceships that are around the Earth. It's more like a horseshoe because they're leaving a path for the incoming planet. And they get far and far away from Earth, and then everybody sort of turns to watch the collision, because how could you not watch the collision? And as they're watching and this rogue incoming planet approaches the Earth and the collision actually happens, it's much bigger and more violent than anybody could have imagined. And the ensuing explosion sends a shock wave out, and it pushes all of humanity's homemade spaceships backwards and deep into outer space, and also apart from each other. So they're now isolated, everybody is alone, and none of the ships can communicate with each other at all. So the go has led to isolation because we escape the planet, but we don't get far enough away. And this isolation leads to the search step of the story, where now that the radio flyer and the Mad Knives are in deep, deep outer space, all by themselves and apart from everybody else, they decide that they need to start searching for survivors. And try to find anybody who is still out there, and an attempt to communicate with anybody who's left to try to figure out what to do now that the plan has been destroyed by this sort of like disaster on top of a disaster that happened when all the spaceships got exploded backwards into outer space. So after search comes find, and in this story, in the Mad Knives story, the find angle is a little weird, because what happens in find is the pilot decides to initiate emergency protocol. This is just part of the pilot's training. When this extra sort of disaster scenario occurred, the pilot puts like a DVD into the dashboard of the radio flyer, and it starts playing this emergency protocol, which unfortunately also includes brainwashing. So what they find is a false sense of comfort and artificial certainty that's brought on by these emergency protocol videos that they're attempting to brainwash everybody inside the radio flyer into a sort of a calm compliance. So that's the find step. Let's turn the page for take, so we have a little more room to talk about it. The next step after find is take, and in the story circle, the step of take is usually accompanied by paying a terrible price. And in our story, the characters all sort of pay separate terrible prices. Overall, the big terrible price is that everybody is getting brainwashed by this emergency protocol, but it affects everybody differently. So the pilot is becoming brainwashed by his own emergency protocol, and it's really resulting in like a big ego and a lot of sort of like creepy optimism coming from the pilot. The co-pilot is getting lost in the system, and her sunny attitude remains, but the brainwashing is fully affecting her as well. The farmer is getting it the worst. The farmer is completely losing the handle on the situation in its entirety during this take step. The doctor is resisting it. The doctor is doing everything she can to resist the brainwashing that's coming through these videos. And the mechanic is still, at this point in the story, still in a coma, still knocked out. So none of the brainwashing has been applied to the mechanic at all. Everybody is paying these different prices, but overall, the price is isolation and a little insanity. It's a combination of like the real issue of the claustrophobia of being inside the ship and the real problem of not being able to communicate with anybody else. And then that combined with the emergency protocol brainwashing, keeping everybody just calm in the midst of all of this insanity. So the next step after take is return. For our story, that means at this point they have turned the ship. So at some point in these explosions and disasters and all of this sort of like physical consequence to this collision, the ship has been turned once or twice to just make it through these disasters. But in the story structure, the return is typically when everybody is heading back home. And the Mad Knives are absolutely doing that at this point. They are heading back towards the site where they were supposed to rendezvous with these other ecosystem pods, and they're supposed to start building the mechanical Earth. Nobody knows if it's there. Nobody knows if anybody else is heading back to that site, but they decided that based on all the uncertainty, the best thing to do is try to go through with the original plan and try to get back towards the site of the former Earth where they're going to build the mechanical Earth. But what always follows the return in the story circle is the change. And at this point, everybody has very much changed. They've transformed into the Mad Knives. So what started as 5 separate people that were sort of thrown together into this particular spaceship and, you know, forced into a group for this catastrophe. I should mention at the very end of the album, the mechanic wakes up from the coma. So they're the audience surrogate for this origin story, and they really come through in the change step. They awaken not brainwashed. The mechanic doesn't know all the extra things that have gone wrong. The mechanic doesn't know the dynamic between the people on the ship, but the mechanic decides to change immediately. In the very last song of the album, they're introduced to the people and the situation and what's going on, and they decide to join the group. So the big thing that has happened is these people have transformed into the Mad Knives. And in that way, this is the story as a whole is sort of an origin story. So like if we walk it through the characters, the pilot started as very confident and capable and a leader, and has sort of devolved into this egotistic, brainwashed fool, like a shadow of a leader. The co-pilot has always just sort of been along for the ride. Just a normal average person who went through some pilot training and has like a sunny disposition. And she maintains her sunny disposition, but it's coming through this strange brainwashed mentality. So it doesn't feel quite as comforting as it once did. The doctor has changed completely in one way, from being like very emotional and out of control in the beginning of the album to avoiding the brainwashing and trying to maintain her senses and sort of be the one capable, especially between her and the farmer. who started very calm and now has completely lost the handle, and their relationship is totally switched. In the beginning, the farmer was coaxing along the doctor and trying to do his best to like take up some of her emotions and guide her to what he thought was the right choice. And then now at the end of the album, the farmer is completely and entirely brainwashed by the emergency protocol and really losing the handle on being stuck inside this spaceship. And the doctor is keeping things together and doing her best to comfort him. And the mechanic has gone from a coma to being awake and now consciously deciding to be a part of the Mad Knives. So really, album 1 is an origin story. This is how the Mad Knives come to be. This is focused on what happens to humanity in the midst of a world-ending disaster and showing how our 5 separate characters become the Mad Knives. That's the story of the first album. I hope y'all will stick around to see how the music actually turns out, and then shortly after that, how the movie that goes along with it will actually turn out. Stay tuned here for all the updates as I move through this crazy, gigantic project. And that's it for now. Thanks for watching. I'll see y'all next time.